Chapter 21. We moved in a line that learned itself by the hour. Nara ahead and to the right, touching trunks, reading bruises in the fern and the way air passes around bark. Mara in the middle, eyes on hands, on cadence, on all the little tells that mean a group is coming apart without knowing it. Talon just behind, the quiet center, adjusting pace the way a good drum makes the others believe they found the beat themselves. Mina ranged to the left where the ground sloped and the slick rock made two tracks whether you wanted them or not. Jas drifted like smoke, up close when a question bit his tongue, off to the side when his energy couldn't bear the tread. I took the tail because the tail was the only place I could breathe and because no one asked to take it from me. By the second day I was falling into it despite myself. Wake before the light had broken. Bank the little fire. Pack without sound. Leave the place the way you found it except for the meat you took and the fat you rendered. They even chatted while we walked. Though we tended to shut up when the birds did. It was a rhythm. I had known other rhythms, arenas, screams, men chanting hate and hope at the edge of death, but this one had no enemy built into it. It rendered me timid. They tried to warm to me. It was there in the way the circle at rest left room for me without pointing to it. In the way the food passed across without anyone counting my share. In the way they let me keep the pipe across my knees and my hand near the skinner and didn't make a thing of it. The body, my body didn't trust ease. It expects the lash that bites for cruelty's sake. I watched their faces in the reflection of water and waited for crows that never came over the horizon. Toward the middle of the day, when the sun burned a thin round hole in the canopy and the heat found us even in the green, they talked. It wasn't interrogation. It was the sort of talk people do when they're friends and have had time for leisure. Mara started it. She checked the wind with a pinch of grass and then looked back at me. So. Sell, she said, rolling my name like she was testing for hidden edges. You ever work a contract? I don't know the meaning of your word, I said. A bounty. A guard run. Escort. Cleanup. Survey. Anything a town can post and a party can accept. I cleaned, I said. We all cleaned. We cleaned blood off stone and sick off sand if you wanted to sleep and it did not pay. The following silence I had begun to get used to. It was if everything I said was an immense shock to these people. Talon lifted a hand and let it fall. Different world, he said softly. We knew the governance did it. I kept my voice steady. Bureaucratica. Jas couldn't keep quiet. The Bureau, he said with relief, as if he had been waiting for the grown-ups to stop so he could explain. You know, he saw my face and cut it short. Right. Okay. So. You know how there's like the whole thing up there. He pointed through the leaves the way boys point to the stars. Worlds. Habitats. Stations. Families. Core. And then there are reserve worlds like this one. Dungeon Reach. Vernith Vale Group. The network puts down roots and runs the economy so it doesn't rot. Runs it how? I asked. Through the Rizal network, Mina said. Eager to take the teacher's chair when Talon left it open. Micah Rizal, you felt it when you woke. It's the reason those chests appeared. It manages planetary resource extraction and provides us with a middle-class method of scraping by. This whole place is fed by it. We trade in essences and sacks for network credit which can then be spent off or on-world. So the network is not a person? I asked. The party shared a glance and then Talon smiled with half his mouth. Neither is a road. Neither is a book. They're still good when they're built well. Then why does it have such a personality? I asked. The glance they shared intensified, Mina finally speaking up saying I don't know what you mean? It's rather bland and robotic by my measure. I let the topic fall away. We walked a while with just the sound of our feet talking to the rot. Then Nara slowed, pressed two fingers to a series of scratches on a trunk, and read them 3 days old, they murmured. Boar drove deer. Not far. Mara nodded and turned the talk another way. You asked about natives, she said, side-eyeing a thorn on a vine before it found her. What we mean is folk like me. I've never been off-world, she added, and then laughed once at my expression. Not me. My mother. My grandparents. You pick a world and you settle your family into the story of that place. Farm valleys. Cliff villages. Narrative arcs. The governor's office pays a stipend for staying in contract. For most of us life is simple. The town pays for adventures to keep the big cats off your cows. You live. You die. Your kids choose to sign again or take the waygate and figure things out on your own. There are rumors of wild natives, she waggled her fingers as if shaking off a spider's web, bands that refuse the nodes and carve at edges. Mostly nonsense. Mostly what rich kids tell each other to make their excursions into the forest feel like war. Jas took it up, mocking himself as he went. Oh, Yeah, that's what I thought you were. One of the wild tribes in the deeper Falmore who steal recorders and eat errant tourists. They wear headdresses made of stolen calms. They think the sun is a god. They dance on bones. He rolled his eyes at himself. You walk 5 kilometers off a marked path and the worst thing that happens is you break your ankle and a guide service sells your parents a rescue contract. Mina snorted. Says a boy who still thinks he can outwalk a predator vine. Jas grinned. I can. I did. Once. You were cut out of it by the oldest woman in Spring Market while you cried, she said. He flushed and didn't argue. Native, I thought to myself. On Chandurax the word meant target. No one spoke for a while. The jungle thrummed around that silence alight with a serenade of insects. We paused to drink at a creek that braided itself around stones like it loved them. Nara crouched to fill skins. The rest of us found logs and took what little comfort they offered, which was a lot for my standard. You asked about guns before, Talon said, as if we were picking up a book he had marked. Why bows and spears? Why not steel and powder? I saw the boy with the net, I said. It worked. But surely he would be cut down by a dozen rifles? Guns work until they don't, he said. The thing is, the system really doesn't want you to die, so it learns fast and subsequently people learn fast. Faster once their tags wake. The first thing the system teaches is how not to be where the harm is going to be. He ticked it off. Speed. Blink. Phase. Skin. Ward. Dampening. Guns throw small metal fast. In mass they'll end in highly enhanced being. In ones and twos they make noise and cut down trees next to any mid-level enhanced. Guns slow you, too. Powder. Shot. Heat signatures. Logistics lines. Meanwhile an enhanced archer needs a bow, a dozen good shafts, and a hand that knows where the wind is blowing. He shrugged. Guns still exist. Some guardworks mount them. Cities love to field them, especially heavy artillery. But if you're a small party on a reserve world, the meta, he tasted the words with amusement, is the old 6-man crew. Mina flicked a beetle off her knee. Also, she said, deadpan, bullets piss off things with plates or enough mass. Clearly agitated by Talon's choice of words. Jas added, and the network discourages some projectile use in cultivation zones. It would expend a lot of resources deflecting projectiles or something, so it just dissuades it altogether and heavily. Besides, it gives back all that potential it saves in the form of monster essence and sacks. Essence, I said, remembering the sack pulsing like a held ember in Nara's jar. Essence, Jas confirmed, and did not hide his pride in knowing. We moved on. We worked around a fallen giant that had throat-choked the undergrowth and left a cathedral of air where the crown lay. Sun made coins in the dust there. Motes lifted and sank through them, quiet as thought. I stood in the light without moving until my skin remembered it forever. We continued our long march through the jungle. Sel, Mara called softly forward. With us. I am, I said. You're 4 paces behind us, and you have been this whole time. Join us, she said, but there was no heat in it. They told me other things as we went because they could not imagine someone not knowing them. Vernath Corporation held the charter on Dungeon Reach and did not grind the world too fine to get what it wanted. Instead of strip mining a planet to its core, the system traded symbiotically under the purview of Vernath. There were worse corpus. Vernath paid native stipends on time and audited poachers like a religion. Vernath let adventurers enter claims and keep a lion's share of essence if they brought it to a sanctioned processor. Vernath hired locals when they could. Vernath's executive chef had once fallen into a vat of pickled root and had to be hauled out by a teen crew. Jas loved that last bit as if it meant anything. Fair trade, Talon said, when I asked what any of that meant for a child like me. It means you can climb your way to the top without needing all the starting capital in the world. I've only heard that sentiment in books, I said. The kind normal men use to silence feelings they don't want to have. Mina glanced at me. You're not a man, she said. It was the gentlest thing she had said to me so far. Not yet. I didn't answer. The jungle did. It creaked, a deep, slow, old sound of weight shifting in wood. Somewhere to our right a bird made a triple call and fell silent. That day we ate on our feet to make time. Pemmican pressed flat and fruit leather the color of old blood. I chewed and did my old counting by tens. It calmed the part of me that wanted to know exactly how many steps I'd eaten. Nara dropped back to walk at my shoulder a stretch. They didn't look at me when they spoke. The discordant thing, they asked. Has it hurt anyone friendly yet? Not directly, I said truthfully. Indirectly, everything I sing hurts everything near me, even if it's just emotional. Or makes them afraid. Or makes them brave enough to do something that gets them killed. Or just kills them. They thought that over. "You've already tagged us," they said finally. "Party link. Your song will know the difference. It's not foolproof, but it helps." "I don't know how," I said. Nara's mouth made a shape that wasn't a smile and wasn't not. That's what orientation teaches. A dragonfly stitched the air between us and went on with its work. That night we made camp on a rise that had seen other camps. Talon kicked old fire circles apart with his boot and made a new one a step removed. The light went out of the world slowly here, as if the day were being folded and put away rather than killed. The mist came up out of the gullies and wrapped the ankles in a way that reminded me of fingers of the faithful. We ate warm for the first time since the boar. Fat boiled with roots Nara swore were safe and Talon swore were not due to the loose murderer. When the food was gone and the smell of it was just the ghost of a meal, the talk woke the way it does around a fire. "What do your families do?" I asked finally, because their ease with the future had piled up in me like a pressure that needed a valve. "Bad art," Mina said at once, and grinned at my face. "My mother paints birds. She's good. She paints them on anything that'll hold still. My father grows flowers, he is more of a dilettante. He'd laugh to see you working a gutter length like a weapon. He'd say, 'That boy's turned a downspout into a maze?'" She said in a shocked mocking tone. "He'd be right," Talon said. "My parents do metal print. Plate work. Signage. It's mostly for rich folk in cities, apparently the handmade stuff goes over really well with high-end clientele." Mara poked the coals with a stick. "Mine so," she said. "Being natives and all that, we don't have the most exciting backstory for a family." Jas wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "My granddad runs a bodega on a side cylinder in an O'Neill colony. My mother wrote dungeon guides. Like real ones. She specialized on the parts the ad copy won't tell you, and that's how my granddad got his bodega." Nara sat with their hands flat on their knees. "I don't know my parents," they said. "My sponsor taught me the path of the scout, it is the way of things. It is enough." They all looked to me then because that is how talk goes, round and round until the circle returns to its first stone. "I don't have family," I said. Jace's face did a boy's thing, hurt and pity and a quick keen interest that wanted a story and hated itself for wanting it. He was kind enough not to ask for more. "People think adventuring is a romance," Talon said after a while, rubbing his thumb and forefinger together as if feeling grit from a blade he had just honed. "It's a job. That most of us do for family. You level and your people eat more steadily, that's the hope. You take a risk so your siblings don't have to. Or so your parents can stop struggling for years on end. Or so you can pay into a Waygate fund and take your kids someplace where they learn to climb the corporate ladder. Only catch is it's life or death," Mara said, much softer than I expected from her. "Every time. You talk about it like Jason does about his games," I said, half to myself. "Loot. Drops. Levels. Essence. Nodes." Mina tilted her head. "Jason," she said. "Who's that?" "Nobody," I said, and let the lie stand like a wall. Nara broke the stick in her hand and fed it to the coals. We let the fire go to a low glow. The jungle sang its thousand small songs. A nightjar hunted. Something large far off lumbered on and then I never heard it again. We posted a watch anyway. Mina took first. Talon took second. Nara offered a third and Mara let them. I took last because I always do. In that last watch the world holds its breath. It was a peaceful time. "Sal," Jas whispered, half asleep, half wanting to ask one more thing. "You're going to come to Grey Step with us, right?" "Probably not," I said. "Why?" "Because the last time I had a family that felt right all of people I loved died." He blinked up at the sky as if it were an equation he could see if he stared long enough. "Okay," he said finally. "You can change your mind. Tomorrow." We walked another day. The loop took us through a stretch of high ground where the trees were set wider and the understory didn't gnash at the shins. Nara found sign of the rumor bounty near a place where two creeks had argued and then agreed. "Boot prints," one said. "A man alone moving fast." A heel scuffed as he turned. A twig broken in the way that says fatigue and not malice. "Dullen," Nara thought aloud. "Maybe. Maybe not. Could be any fool walking alone out here against wisdom." Mara marked the sign with a little twist of grass I wouldn't have seen if she hadn't shown it to me. "We'll tell the conservator when we're back," she said. "Let a paid team go flush him. We're not paid to be heroes." I kept my mouth still and nodded along. We found another heat sack and two cold ones and a clutch of eggs no one could identify. They made jokes about Jace's habit of naming things he shouldn't. Mina shoved him once when he got too close to some poisonous ivy. At rest, they told me more of what was to come. How orientation would work when I finally let it. A kiosk in a town hall. A clerk whose job was to walk children and grown men through the same system as they join. A little quiz to make sure I understood I might die anywhere and that it would still be my fault. I almost laughed at that part. A pamphlet on enchantment. You think it's silly, Mina said, reading my mouth. I think the world I came from never had the money to print a pamphlet on anything, I said. If someone had paper, they ate it. Eat this, Jas said, and flicked a dried fruit slice at me because he could not help himself. I caught it out of the air and ate it. It had some of the sun still trapped in it, and for a minute my head went light and my hands forgot to tremble. On the fourth day the ridge shouldered up gentle and we climbed it, Myra's hand on the middle of my back once without thinking when I slowed at a height that was nothing and meant nothing and I wanted to kill the impulse to flinch at that touch and could not. At the top we found the first of the sun-scratched stones. It was a flat-backed boulder with a shallow notch cut with care. Talon watched it as the light shifted through the high canopy and grunted when the notch filled with a line that glowed. There, he said. First. 2 more and we'll be in line with the waypost. After that, gray step. We began the descent. The sea lay somewhere to the east. The map shard wrote in my pocket. I had stopped looking at it to tell me the truth. Especially after Nara had mentioned after seeing the shard that sod I thought they had patched out map shards as drops years ago. At dusk we stopped in a place where the ground was dry for once and the trees made a roof that shed the mist. We ate soft fat fried slices of meat and wild greens. Talon sharpened his axe. Mina oiled the bowstring and sang under her breath a real song about an old oak that had learned to walk. Jas lay on his back and counted birds until the counting bored him and he fell asleep. Nara sat with knees up and eyes watching the line where dark becomes darker. This whole time it has felt you think we're going to die, Mara said, not as a question. I think everyone does, I said. Question is where? Do you picture it often? She asked after a moment. Yes, I said calmly in a pit with a window open to the sky, I said. With men cheering all around. She turned the stick over the coals and let that rest. You won't die here, she said finally. Not with us. That is far worse, I said. Calmly looking to the sky. Silence after that. The kind that isn't empty. The kind that means the talk has done the work it could and now the night gets to rest. We turned in by watches. I took last again. I sat and I watched and I breathed and the world did not end. Somewhere far off in the night sky, a single light, not a star, moved in the sky. It winked out of existence. Morning came with a small rain. The steam rose off leaves all around. The world was as it had been except I knew the shape of these 5 strangers a bit better. We walked. They talked of the future and I floated through it. I don't know what I'll be when I am grown, I said once, when Jas asked me the smallest, cruelest question. On Chandurax the only job we had was breathing. Everything else was forced. We came to a place where the ridge fell away like the side had been cut out of it with a dull knife. The air lifted cool and wet. The forest opened its hand and showed a long finger of land reaching out into something I couldn't yet see but could hear. Waves, not the slam of them, the long drag as they went back to find themselves again. A gull called and I could not stop my body from leaning toward that sound like a man leans toward bread. We'll be 2 days to Greystep, Talon said. If you want to peel off here, this is a good line. No bad crossings. Don't sleep on the flats, he added ominously. I'll walk a bit further with everyone, I said. Mara nodded like she had expected that. We'll keep talking it through, she said. It's not an ambush. I know, I said. It was the only thing I could think to say that would not be a lie or a wound. We shouldered the weight and took the path the jungle made. I felt the boar cloak on my shoulders and thought of Chandurax and of the hive and of the pipe in my hands and of the wheel fiddle bundled in my pack and I saw a shape I had not allowed in a very long time, a life that had mornings in it and men who would be alive at dusk and the next dusk. I did not trust it. But I could not deny that the path I was on had room for it. We walked on. Chapter 22. The ridge ran out under our boots and the green thinned until I could see distance for the first time in weeks. Air came up out of the valleys cool and clean and lifted the sweat off us. Somewhere ahead and below something big breathed and pulled all the little sounds into itself, the long drag of water returning to water. We walked with purpose and talk. The nearer the sea sounded, the tighter my chest drew. The throat knew too much about gates and walls. I counted my steps. Talon pointed his chin at the sky and said we'd make the road by noon. I told myself I would peel off at the edge of the first field and let them go to their city with the living. I told myself I would be better off alone. I told myself a lot of things that had the shape of resolve and the taste of dread. We came down into a belt of trees that loved wet muck and there was the road. It didn't shout. It presented itself. Crushed shell and red stone, crown true, shouldered with grass. Cart ruts wrote their own little stories across it, many moving both ways. On the far side a post stood with 3 metal leaves bolted to it, each leaf stamped with numbers and an arrow. Someone had poured resin over the engravings to keep the moss from eating them. Above the leaves a small lens blinked, caught light, blinked again. It watched the crossroads and did not pretend otherwise. The network put a small taste of metal in my mouth. Civic Zone, Verneth Vale, Outer Corridor. Curfew Advisory, Predator Migration, 5 to 7 solar days. Welcome to the edge of that map, Tolan said jokingly, and clapped Jas on the shoulder when the boy tried to step into the middle of the road without looking. We kept to the verge in a line. Wagons came by in 2s and 3s. The beasts that drew them, some mix between horse and oxen, had shoulders like barrels and eyes that took everything in. Drivers raised a hand. No one stared. A pair of women in tan coats with Verneth patches at the breast according to Nara, and rode small motor rigs that purred without smoke and left a lane of flattened grass that sprang back after a minute. A child on a low cart held a glowing stick and let the glow trail in the air behind the cart to make a ribbon. He laughed at his own mark in the air, and his mother took the stick from him with a word and a touch on the ear that held no anger in it. Every step slid the knot inside me a notch tighter. The taste of iron in the mouth. The urge to put my hand to the pipe and not let go. I told myself to stop at the turn where the road ran between 2 field stones and take the hedge line east. I didn't stop following the party. I told myself to leave at the next bend when the road fell and the sound of the sea came up like a promise. I didn't. We made the second marker and then the third, and the road climbed a little, and there it was below us and ahead, the walls and the roofs and the smoke and the light. Gray steps sat on a ledge that had long ago carved into a town. The walls grew out of the ledge, stone the color of fog, cut through and pinned with steel where the old rock had given under weather. Spaced along the wall were short towers capped with metal hooding that turned like slow birds. Cameras, the eyes of a city. Between the towers the parapet ran notched and low and human-scaled. A painted line ran around the wall a half-meter up from the base, a stripe of the same soft blue as the sky on a pale day. The gate did not yawn like a mouth awaiting new meat. It hung set and careful, 2 leaves of thick timber faced with plates, and above it a lintel that had seen hands on it and words knifed into it reading off the city's name. People moved in and out. No crowd. No panic. Goods on carts. A woman with a line of 5 children hooked together by the sleeves so none would be lost. A man with 3 cages of birds. There was a light over the gate, not a torch, not a bulb, a soft bar that hummed without heat, fed from no wire I could see. A fern hung in a pot from its bracket and did not mind the hum. I made myself look up. There were no bodies hung there. No admonitions in bone. A placard read: Gray step, common charter. It should have been a happy moment. I did not smile. The wardens at the gate wore leather hardened with plates set where a strike might find them. Steel bands ran the length of their sleeves. Their badges were stamped with a stylized oak leaf and the name of the town. They carried spears and short bows with strings waxed against the wet, not the long guns of men who like to murder from a balk distance. A lens rode each shoulder where a pauldron would sit. The lenses ticked and made small adjustments. Mara gave them the look of a person who has entered and exited 100 times. The youngest warden saw our line, our packs, the boar hide, the fit of our boots, and decided we were exactly what we looked like. Party? He asked. 5 registered, Mara said. She tipped her head toward me. 1 guest. A wild native? He asked, and made the words soft so it wouldn't bite. Until he's not, Tolan said, with no apology in it. We'll vouch for him. The warden's lens kissed my chest and threw a dot there that I could not feel. I stood without flinching. He watched the return scroll across his inner vision and made the same face we had all made the first time the network had been told what it did not expect and decided to accept anyway. All right, he said finally. Line on the right. Thanks, folks. We passed under the lintel and the knot inside my chest did not pop. It fluttered into the ribs, my ribs, and made itself a new home. Inside the wall the town rose gently from the gate down to the sea like a hand opening. Streets stepped outward from a central circle like spokes from a hub. Most buildings were 1 story, some 2. Stone first to the knee, then timber, then a skin of something like tin. Steel bands crossed door frames in X's where damp would have warped a door into stubbornness. Eaves bore gutters of bright metal that glowed at their seams like a coal banked under ash. They fed nothing I could see, and still I heard the low contentment of power being moved. Neon signs over doorways breathed their names in colors that didn't shout. The lantern steam. Salt and stitch. Rivet and root. Each letter drawn with a hand that had done its work with joy. Along the rooflines little glass pods hung like fruit. In the pods were small ferns and pale flowers that had never lost an argument with winter. Water ran in shallow channels at the street's edge. Footbridges made of old ship planks crossed the channels and wore the dents of 100 years' boots. Under a canopy at the central circle a fat bell hung and a lens above it kept count. Children ran past us with sticks and bright paper shapes that bent wind to their will. A woman rode a bicycle built lean and tidy and carried a crate of bread on the back. The bread steamed. The smell reached down into me and brushed rooms I had shut for 7 years. A street server shaved ice with a knife that had a good edge and poured syrup from a jar that glowed strawberry red. A man in a leather apron hammered a rivet home. A camera on a bracket watched him with perfect interest and then turned its head to watch a dog deciding whether to lift its leg against a bollard that had a little sign. In another life I would have called it gnomish, all brass and glass and comfort made with wit and work. Here it was simply alive. No one shouted at us. No one barred the way. A woman with a 3-string sat on a stoop and worked her fingers along the neck of it in a way that said she had no interest in playing for anyone but herself. The farther we went in, the stranger the quiet in me became. My eyes climbed over the sweetness like a starving creature supervising a feast. The body registered color and smell, the clean lines of things made by hands not in a hurry, the small inventions that kept water moving and lanterns bright, and still nothing in me unclenched. I walked in a town and could not make my feet believe it. I looked at a baker's face and could not file it under a class of men who had learned to find a boy's pain and sell it twice over. Mara felt it. Of course she did. She stopped where the street broke into the central circle and set a hand against my arm and left it there until my lungs remembered they could draw air all the way to the bottom. "Easy," she said. "You're in a good place. The worst thing that happens here before sundown is a cart tips and somebody has to shout for a heave." "I know," I said. Though my head didn't. Talon made us eat before we did anything foolish. He bought 5 bowls of fish stew and one for me and set them on a table in the circle and no one tried to count spoonfuls. The stew had pieces of fish that had met salt and heat both melded into the meat. Greens swam in the broth with a bitter freshness. Bread came on a plate and we tore it as if we'd been born to. A boy and a girl came to our table to look at Nara's green feet and then looked at me balking in fear for my scared body. "Orientation kiosk," Mina reminded, "over the food." "Later," I said. The word didn't come out as defiance and it wasn't a plea. "Please," I added because I was trying to learn to be again. "Let me settle in and see first." Mara nodded and looked toward a building with a sign that gave off a contented amber. "All right," she said. "We'll get rooms, then. If you'd rather sleep outside, no one's dragging you in." "What is that place?" I asked, because the light of it had warmed the side of my face even where I hadn't meant to look. A low house, 2 stories wide and unworried. Stone to the waist, timber above with bands of hammered steel holding joints like old vaudeville braces. Over the door a sign in glass reading the step and lantern, the letters breathing signaling open. A painted kettle hung from the same bracket, dented and dear. In front 2 tables had been dragged into the shade. "A tavern," Jess said, as if telling me there were stars. "Real good one too." The step and lantern had made room for a whole town. Inside it was light from a dozen sources that were not the sun. Lanterns hung at different heights in a thoughtful unorder, their skins of pearly glass glowing with a life that did not flicker. Wiring hid behind wood that had been cut and planed by someone with an artistic flair. The bar ran long and honestly, built from a single run of a tree bigger than the height of most houses in Greystep. Bottles lived behind it in a rack that held them and did not boast about it. A chalkboard dared the day: stew, FISH stew, ROOT loaf/ale/light/heavy/cider. To one side a low stage had been built for music but the table that sat on it suggested the music today was talk. We came in through the press, light press, not a crowd, and took a corner that let me face the door without needing to announce the need. People spoke in their own lanes. Dice clicked in a cup. A woman behind the bar who had shoulders with an elven grace attended the patrons with gusto and joy. "Rooms?" she asked when Mara drifted near on the way past. "You look like you could use the rest." "2," Mara said. "If you've got them." "For good coin," the woman said and winked, while the coin changed hands. The rooms were above the taproom, 2 doors down a hall that smelled of lye and roasted root. The floorboards had real grain and the give of wood that had sagged with age. The walls were whitewashed stone with seams too clean for chisel work and thin lines of metal set under the plaster that drank the lamplight and returned it gently. A strip of amber ran the crown of the ceiling, no flame, a steady band that warmed without smoke or hum. The room was sparse but nice. At the far corner sat a basin carved from stone. A ring of little notches along its lip glowed when I turned them and water came in clean and ran out without trouble. No pump. No bucket. A small grit in the lintel gave off a summer cool breath that kept the damp from our blankets without raising dust. It was not rich. It was good. It was a kind of good Chandurax had taught me to forget. Jas threw himself at the bed nearest the window and then jumped up at once as if he had scorched a hand, tried to act like he hadn't, and took the roll without complaint. Talon sat down at the foot of the other bed and unstrapped his axe with the care of a man who had never left a tool on the floor in his life. I stood with the pack in my hands and did not know where to put it. There was a hook on the wall for that exact problem. My hand hovered under it as if the hook might be a lie. "Hooks for packs," Talon said. The voice of a teacher that had learned to make everything sound simple. I hung the pack. The act touched parts of me I had been keeping quiet since I was a child. "Bath down the hall," he added. "Hot if the boiler's kind." Jas was already pulling off his boots. "I call the first wash," he said. Then, seeing my face, added, "You can go first, Sel, if you want." "I'll wait," I said. The room had my attention. The beds had mattresses. Not sacks of grass. Not pallets over grating. Mattresses with some kind of spring in them that lifted your bones instead of taking them. The linen wore a faint scent that was not quite flour and not quite soap. The pillow took the shape of my palm and then forgot it. My whole body felt about 10 minutes away from refusing to move again no matter what I told it. We moved around each other in the quiet ease of people who mean no harm and have no wish to be harmed. Jas came back from the hall with steam in his hair and a grin he did not bother to hide. "Boiler's hot," he said. "Bless this town forever." He tossed me a pair of sleep pants with the Inns mark stamped at the waist. "Wear those, not your cloak," he added without malice. "The sheets will thank you. I will spare you the details of that bath, but it was beyond heavenly." Talon went last. When he returned he shut the door with a hand on the latch and looked at me the way men look at dogs whose owners had neglected them. I pretended to have fallen into a deep sleep. "You can pretend to sleep if you like," he said. He didn't sit. He stood with the bed at his back. "I'll say this once and not again. You don't have to tell us anything. You don't owe us that. But you can talk to me if you want to. You can talk to any of us. You don't have to carry it alone all the time." "I know," I said. He nodded. "Okay." I lay down. The mattress moved under me and then held me. The boar cloak went over the chair back. The skinner went under the pillow because my hands didn't know where else to put it. The pipe lay within reach. I turned my face to the wall and let the hum from the ceiling wash over my shoulders, steady as a tide. Talon blew out the lamp. There was no dreaming. My mind did not try to show me anything better or worse than the room I was already in. It gave me the mercy of blankness and a bed that did not need my blood to keep it warm. Morning found me with an ache in the jaw where I must have clenched against the idea of sleep. Jas was already awake and bouncing his heel in the air like a metronome. He handed me a shirt, one of his own, laundered thin, the color of old oatmeal. "Breakfast," he said, as if that were a spell. Downstairs the room smelled of fat and sweet and the burn of coffee. The crowd was a smooth mix of native families and people who lived by charters. Farmers with hands like bark. A pair of guards in neat gray standing at ease with bowls in their hands. A woman in a courier's jacket, boots still muddy, eating like a machine. Children in their frenzied storm, allowed to be loud for an hour before the day carried them off. We took a table by the wall and the plates came heavy and hot. Stewed beans with an egg cracked into them and stirred while still cooking. Bread with a shore of crust and a soft that gave without the need for a knife. A pot of coffee that had the kind of bitterness that reminds one of dinner food. I told my hand to be reasonable and my hand did not listen. I ate past reason and kept going until reason was abandoned. Mina smirked at me in a way that said she had seen boys with the need to catch up on calories before. Talon made no remark, and Jas put a peach, if that is what it was, on my plate and pretended not to see me pause with it in my hand until I put my teeth in it and the juice ran down to my wrist and I swore softly at the good of it. When the plates were cleared, Mara pushed her chair back with a decision. "Let's do it," she said. "No point in wasting time on something easy." "I'm fine," I said. "Good," she answered, and there was no quarrel in it. The kiosk stood in the square off the market street, a plain stone set into the ground with its face lifted to the sky. No filigree. No heraldry. The only adornment was a rectangle the size of my palm set flush to the stone, smooth and pale. At the base an engraved line that read, "Orientation, Public." There were 3 other obelisks through the square that seemingly did other things. Talon gestured to the simple one. "Hand on the pad. Look at the obelisk. Don't fight it. You'll want to, but don't. It goes fast if you let it." "How fast?" I asked. "Like falling asleep," he said. "Today," Mina added, smiling with the mock indignation of a teenage girl. We stood there a moment longer, because I was old habits wrapped in a young body and they knew it. Nara gave the square one long look and took a step as if they meant to guard me. Jas bounced on the balls of his feet and then remembered and forced himself to go still. I approached and put my hand to the stone. It was cool, and then it was not a temperature at all. It was a sensation like the way a good note goes through a room and vibrates the threads that hold all things together. The square under my palm pulsed once. The world folded down into a narrow hall where the walls were the color of dust. There was no fear in it. There was no joy in it. There was only the clean work of information moving from one space into another. Orientation, begin. User, Selmans //tags, Bard, Threnody, //level, 12, unclaimed, status, late registrant, safe zone rights, provisional. Legal, acknowledged charter law, YN yes, I said without moving my mouth. The hall opened to a set of plain statements. They came in a voice and cadence that was not the chorus's and did not pretend to be kind. You are embarking to become an adventurer if you accept this risk in exchange for resources and standing. You are not required to do this work. You may leave now. Stepping past the metal marker. The laws presented themselves without ornament. Safe zone agreement. No lethal force within the boundary except in immediate defense of life. No theft from the living or the dead within the boundary. Chartered claim supersedes. No compulsion of body or mind. Contracts must be system witnessed. No sabotage of civic works. Breach of any of the aforementioned rules triggers, system hunted, until restitution or removal. There were other pages. Consent signage. The explanation of maps. The waypost marks. The knot of law that bound all adventurers. The forced voice of the system continued, you may level by bringing the world back to the network, essence, sacks, recoveries, map work, rescue, survey, salvage. You may level by finishing chartered problems. You may level from true exploration. Level up opportunities, 12, backlogged, deferred until orientation, claim now? Y/N yes, I said. The hall unrolled into a mechanic's shop. Everything labeled, everything in its box. Stats. Verses. Traits. Titles. Point by point, it lets me see the angle of myself. Verse library, Threnody, validated. Precession, afterwind, upgrade branches, radius, stability, mend, frailty. Cinderfall note, upgrade branches, heat, pierce, linger, split. New unlock, 8 Latvian Lati, dirge of unmaking, single target suppression, unclaimed. New unlock, 12 Latvian Lati, wake for the broken, field rally, unclaimed. The text didn't sing the way the verses did when they were spoken. It laid them out the way a smith lays out tools. I thought of men in tight halls with their breath working wrong and their lives wanting to leave them early. It offered me the new song's dirge of unmaking wanted a certain quiet in the throat. Wake for the broken wanted a certain sympathy in the chest I had not had room to carry in a long time. I took them both. Traits, class/general. Boneco, range, party link only, claimed. Afterwind, severity mild baseline, claimed. Network synergy, discordant tuning, it's a rare bard people do not like to see coming. You are harder to like while singing, always on. Fieldcraft, scavenger, camp efficiency, salvage yields, available. Old work, improvised weapons, pipe, pick, pry, club, available. I took them all. Titles slid into their own place, a shelf I hadn't learned to reach. Titles available. Witness of a sky burn, locked, needs historium, first heir of our locked root privilege system OS state 00.1, last child of Chandurax, equipable, discordant bard, class title, prophet of the slave, local, informal, crow eater, local, informal. It suggested combinations the way a shopkeep suggests cloth. Class +1 formal. Add an informal when the town knows your name. I decided to relish discordant bard because that wasn't going anywhere. I set last child in the other slot and the system adjusted. Loadout. Primary, gutter pipe, rusted, latent, attunement available. Secondary, skinner, pitmake. Tertiary, wheel fiddle, ashen dirge, caution advised. It offered to bind the pipe. I told it to wait. I wanted to know more about it before I put any more of myself into it. The metaphysical shop closed itself in an instant and left me in the hall again with the law on one wall and the pictures of brave adventurers on the other, that I was meant to emulate. In front of me a menu appeared. There was an option to sign with a finger and an option to walk away. I put my finger where it wanted it. Orientation, complete. Safe zone rights, granted, local, ledger, active. Level up rewards, applied. New quests available, job board, tutorials, optional, paths/enchantment/contract law. Everything else came back, the square, the noise of the market, the heat of the day moving up out of the paving. My hand left the stone on its own. Jas let out the breath he'd been holding. "How was it?" he asked. "Surprisingly short," I said. Mara watched me the way a surgeon watches a patient stand up after a long cut. "You good?" she asked. "Better than I deserve," I said. Nara studied my eyes. "Get anything good?" they asked. I did. They nodded once, as if the information was to be expected. "Good." Talon touched the edge of the obelisk with his fingers before putting his hands in his belt. "You're legal now," he said. "Jokingly an official certified adventurer, now you'll be able to afford to sleep in a bed." "I slept in a bed," I said. "Last night." "Then again," he said. "Tonight." The rest of the morning lived in errands and relief. Mina took a string bag with a list and came back with tinder cakes that would start a fire in the rain and a small tin of sef for the bites I had not mentioned. Jas walked me through the armory counter like a boy showing a friend how to read in a library he loved. "Don't pick that, it's for show, take this, it's boring and it works." He made me buy a second shirt with coin the note had transferred to an account the clerk swore had always been mine. I pulled the chit forward with my mind and it manifested into my hand and I let it sit there for a moment marveling at the majesty of it. We ate at a stall under a canvas where a woman rolled dough on a board and fried it on a flat stone, brushing it with oil and sprinkling something that burned into the bread and drew the nose in the best way. I ate too. Jas ate 3 and paid for them all with a nod and a wink. Talon split off to update the bounty report with the conservator so the town would know where fools' footprints had been. Mara checked our names on the extended lodgings board and made sure a clerk spelled "sell" the way I had said it and nothing else. Nara ghosted and I didn't see them much in the city at all. In the early afternoon we stood again in the square and Mara looked at me to see if I was going to run. I did not. I didn't stay because I trusted any of this. I stayed because it had been 7 years since the world offered 3 meals and a bed and a job that didn't involve turning other men into meat. Jas bounced the same question all over his face and then found the courage to whisper, "Ask me." "What did you pick?" he asked, proud as if he had helped. "For skills or songs, I mean." Durjavan making a single target suppression song and something called Wake for the Broken, a field rally ability. Apparently it will help if we do something stupid. He grinned like a boy who had drawn a good card. "We do tend to do stupid things," he said. "I noticed," I said. Mina pushed him with her shoulder. "We do calculated things that sometimes look dumb from the outside." "You keep telling yourself that," Jas said, and there was affection in the scold. Men called to each other because they needed to lift something heavy. A girl shouted for a dog who would not come. The bell in the guardhouse rang 3 times because the hour had moved. We went back to the lantern step to get our packs in order. The others intended to go back out to the jungle soon. The common room held a buzz under the talk, rumor of the bounty man seen near the teeth. The buzz of drink and camaraderie flowed. I let it run through me the way a river runs, pounding and tremendous straight to the heart. On the stairs Mara put a hand on the rail and looked down to gaze upon the crowd. "You don't have to come back with us," she said, which meant she wanted me to and wasn't going to make me feel like I was obligated. "I know," I said. "Then decide by evening. We pull at dawn." She didn't make a speech. She didn't promise the future. She went up the stairs and left the choice there where I could choose for myself. It was an uncomfortable and foreign concept in this life, choice. In the room Jas had arranged his gear in a line along the wall and was explaining to nobody how each piece he owned was exactly the right piece for the work it did. He stopped when he realized he was doing it out loud and colored. Tall and sat on the bed with a whetstone and patience. I lay back and watched the amber strip at the crown of the ceiling hum its steady hum. My hand drifted to the pipe and rested there. The chorus lay in my ribs with its nose on its paws, awake and not speaking. The city breathed under us. It made a noise I had not heard in a very long time, the noise of people who were genuinely happy.